Now, MPs have warned that Britain will lose its influence with the United States and other NATO allies unless it increases defence spending by tens of billions of pounds a year. The Commons Defence Committee is calling for a boost similar to that which has been promised to the NHS. It comes at a time of heightened tension between the Ministry of Defence and Downing Street over the budget. Well, Dr. Catarina Thomson is a senior lecturer in strategy and security at the University of Exeter, and she joins us from our studio there now. Catarina, thanks very much for being with us here on BBC News. Let's kind of do with the factual stuff first, if we may. What proportion of our budget in terms of public spending are we devoting to defence? And when the government says it's meeting the 2%, what does that actually mean?
That means that 2% of GDP is going to defence, which means we're in full compliance with the NATO norms. What has been proposed today is an increase of that to 3% of GDP.
Terms, in terms of where this money is being spent, because at the same time we're hearing that our armed forces, in terms of the number of men and women employed, have never been smaller, or certainly not smaller than since the Napoleonic Wars. That sounds odd if you're talking about we're meeting the NATO target.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last bit very well.
Forgive me, we have a situation, we're told, as you say, that we're meeting the NATO target, and yet at the same time, many military chiefs grumble that we've got the smallest armed forces since the Napoleonic Wars. Did you hear my question?
Yes, sorry. The point is, yes, I can hear you now. I think the point is having a strong defense isn't just about protecting the nation, it's also about power projection. And I think the point has been made by other players at this key time, is that at this key time in history, right, as Brexit is occurring and we leave the EU, we need to decide what kind of international player we're going to be. If you look at the 2015 Strategic Defence and Security Review, it's very ambitious in terms of scope. And I think what several actors have been proposing today is, in order to adequately fulfill those statements that have been set forward, we need an increase in funding.
I mean, what Lord Horton, the former Chief of the General Staff, was saying when in his contribution today was that he thinks we've been deluding ourselves that we are spending sufficient to justify our self-confidence about our place in the world, that in other words our new military capabilities, the ones we aspire to have, can't actually be afforded on the amount of money we're devoting to defence at the moment.
I think he's correct to point out that there is a gap between the kind of power projection we seek to have and that we say we have and the kind of resources we've had. We have to remember this is in a context of cuts to defence that have occurred under these times of austerity recently.
Let me ask you about...
And it's not just, as I said...
No, please continue.
As I said before, it isn't just about protecting the nation, but about power projection and the signals we send out to key allies at this point in time, in which we're trying to say we're open for business, we're leaving the EU, but we still want to remain a key international player.
You've done some research into public attitudes towards increasing defence funding. What's the sort of public view of this? Is it something people want to invest more in?
So one of the most shocking pieces of information I found from this recent survey, in which we looked at security views of the public and also security expert, is that, again, after these years of austerity, only 12% of the UK population thinks we should cut defence spending. Overall, only 38% of the public thinks you should increase defence spending, but if you disaggregate it between people who voted Brexit and people who voted to remain, a majority of those who voted Brexit think we should increase defence spending. And across the board, a majority of the public population in the UK thinks that the UK needs a strong military in order to be efficient in international relations, including 3/4 of those who voted remain. Of those who voted leave.
So there's a really strong division then?
Yes.
Dr. Catarina Thomson.
Yes, indeed.
Dr. Catarina Thomson, the University of Exeter, thanks very much for being with us on BBC News this evening. Now, the US Supreme Court has upheld President Trump's travel ban.